Hey there, folks. I get a lot of questions about Kokanee Dodger shape. There's many different shapes out there. The two primary families are the skateboard versus the teardrop style, but there's quite a bit of variation even in the teardrop style. You have the long, skinny teardrop style versus more of the what I kind of call like the raindrop style. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you what these look like underwater with a relatively short leader to a micro hoochie, and let you see the action that they impart. And as I go along here, I'll talk a little bit about when and why I run these at different times and these different shapes. So let's get started with just your basic 4.5-inch skateboard Dodger. I'm going to get these all up to troll speeds at around 1.3 to 1.5 and try to hold it there so you can see what the action looks like on them. So with these skateboard Dodgers, as you can see, they put a pretty good slow thump. So it's a very, I'd say, moderate action Dodger in terms of the speed at which it flips from side to side, but it swings really widely. So if you look at how it swings side to side, it really kicks the lure side to side, but not at a rapid pace at typical Kokanee troll speeds. And you also notice another thing is it actually kind of dives down. So from the weight, it drops away pretty precipitously. And that's what I've noticed with these skateboard Dodgers is they don't really run flat behind the weight or the downrigger. So I tend to use these primarily when I'm flatlining and I want to target that top 10 foot of the water column. Because I know they're going to dive down on their own pretty well. But if I'm wanting to hit specific depths with the downrigger, I don't like using them with the downrigger because they kind of do their own thing a little bit, and it's hard to predict exactly what depth you're going to be fishing at when running these. Okay, so next we're going to do the 4.5-inch teardrop. This is for the skinny style. I'm trying to run the 4.5 and 5.5 with a similar bend just so you can see how the action changes based on length and not on bend. I would never run them flat. I know a lot of companies ship their Dodgers flat and then you bend them yourself. Paulina actually bends them for you and they have a really good thump when they're bent this way. But sometimes they're a little bit too extreme for the speeds that I want to troll. If I want to troll a little faster, I got to bend them, flatten them out a little bit. All right, let's start with the 4.5-inch. So the 4.5-inch, you can see it's got a much quicker thump at typical Kokanee troll speeds. And you can see it also tends to run more in line with the weight, right? So in other words, if you're running this on a downrigger and you set it at 30 feet, it's probably going to be at 30 feet. You know it will be. Now, because it's only 4.5 inches long, it actually doesn't swing side to side that much just because of its limited length. And you can see that it doesn't impart a huge amount of action on that hoochie. But it does put out a lot of flash for a Dodger of its size. So the 4.5 is sort of my go-to for smaller Kokanee that are light biting. Maybe they don't want something with a lot of flash or a lot of action. This is just perfect for them. And I will use this flatlining with a dropper weight or off the downrigger, and generally produces a lot of fish for me. Okay, let's do the 5.5-inch and see what that looks like. Okay, so here's the 5.5-inch. Let's get it deployed and get underwater and see how that looks. Okay, so you can see similarly to the 4.5-inch, it runs pretty true. You know, with from the weight back, it doesn't drop or go up a lot. It's a little bit slower thump, but still very extreme and much faster than the skateboard. But because of that longer length, you see how much it tosses around that hoochie a lot more. It really kicks it side to side and imparts a lot more action. So, you know, this is when you're wanting to draw a lot of attention into your gear. Maybe you're targeting bigger, more aggressive Kokanee. The 5.5-inch is definitely one of my go-to. So like if I'm fishing deep on the downrigger or watercolor is a little bit off, this is a really good choice. Now, one of the problems you have to be careful with the 5.5 is if you put too much bend in it and you try to flatline with it, it will want to skate on the surface. So you have to flatten it out a little bit. But otherwise, It's a very good choice for flatlining behind a dropper weight like I'm doing here, or off the downrigger. But you do have to watch that bend. The more bend, the harder you're going to get that thump, and it will speed up quite a bit. So here we're at 1.5. Out of the package, I tend to get the best thump at around 1.2 to 1.3 on this Dodger. Okay, so next up is the Paulina Peak Performance Dodger, which is sort of a what I call raindrop. It's shorter and fatter than the traditional teardrop Dodgers that I just showed you. And this is their heaviest iteration of it. So they have a light version, which I'm going to show you in a sec. But let's get this one on and deployed. Okay, so here's the Peak Performance Dodger. So you can see it almost rolls over at troll speeds 1.4, 1.5. It really flips hard from side to side and puts out a lot of flash. And it moves that hoochie a lot, side to side. To me, it reminds me a little bit of the skateboard in terms of the speed in which it flips from side to side. But I also feel like it does a better job of exposing the opposite sides of the Dodger to the fish. So you really get that contrast between the metal and the tape, whatever they have on there. It does tend to dive a little bit from the weight. It kind of goes down. This is on their heavier version of the Peak Performance Dodger. You see it goes down and away from the weight, which is why I love this Dodger for flatlining, or if I'm fishing a little bit above fish, I'm okay with my Dodger dropping down a little bit on tops of those schools. All right, let's look at the light version of that. Okay, so there's the light version in Purple Haze. Let's go ahead and get this one deployed and see what it does underwater compared to that one we just looked at. Immediately apparent is that it thumps a little bit faster, right? It has less mass, so therefore less inertia, and so it wants to move side to side a little bit more, and it really kicks that hoochie extremely well from side to side. It also tends to run a little bit truer. It still drops a little bit from the weight, but otherwise looks very, very good. In fact, this is probably my favorite Dodger overall, is the Peak Performance Light. I just find myself reaching for this one because I like that speed at which it kicks side to side. It still has that pretty extreme rotation where it's almost looks like it's gonna spin all the way over, but it doesn't. So you're getting that really strong contrast, like chartreuse, purple, silver, chartreuse, purple, silver. It really hits, and I think that really entices the fish to strike, and then they get lots of great action on the lure as well. Definitely one of my favorite Kokanee Dodgers of all time. Well, I hope this video helped illustrate just the different types of actions you're going to get from these different shapes and sizes of Dodgers. So just remember, there's a lot at play. It's not just shape, it's not just size, it's weight. And also, if you put any bend in it, it's going to impact that action as well. And then how that influences your lure's action is going to depend greatly on leader length, the mass and action of that lure too. Overall, I think it's always good to have a variety of shapes in your tackle kit, because there are days they're going to want that extreme action, and there are days that they want something more subtle. And having that ability to quickly shift between different actions on your Dodgers is going to make a big difference. But overall, for me, I still believe strongly that the Peak Performance Light is probably one of my favorites in terms of just overall action and catchability. I just always seem to do very well with that Dodger, no matter the conditions. It seems to be very versatile. All right, guys, I'll put links to everything down below. If you have any questions, let me know. Oop, there's fish. Oh, it's a little rainbow. Just a little guy. Whoa. Now you fight. I told you they always fight when they get close to the boat. There he goes. See you later, buddy. They always do that. They always interrupt me when I'm trying to do my end monologue. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder. Bye, guys.